What if living longer was not just about avoiding disease, but about unlocking decades of vitality, connection, and function? Today, we bring you the real deal on longevity, what truly works, what to prioritize, and how you can take action now to thrive. Dr. Josie Tenore is back on WellWaveNOW, one of today's leading voices in longevity medicine, hormone optimization, and regenerative health. With decades of hands-on experience helping patients go beyond generic advice, she brings the proven strategies and expert guidance on what really helps people live longer and better. In this conversation, Dr. Josie shares how much longevity we can realistically expect in years, why Healthspan matters more than ever, and the essential pillars of thriving later in life, including nutrition, exercise, sleep, hormones, mental health, purpose, and connection. We also explore advanced interventions like peptides and biomarkers, the misunderstood role of testosterone for both women and men, and her vision for the exciting future of longevity medicine. Stay tuned. You will leave this episode with the real deal on what works to help you feel, function, and live your best life at every life stage. Welcome to WellWaveNOW, your portal for actual wellness insights. We, Breck Rice, Dr. Bob Levine, and I, Tim Daniels, are your wellness catalysts committed to elevating your health, enhancing your functionality, and optimizing your performance at every life stage. WellWaveNOW, where timeless wisdom lights your wellness path.
Hey, it's great to have you back on the show again, Dr. Josie. It's good to see you.
Good to be back. It's always so fun to see you guys, you gentlemen.
Yeah, it's. I understand you had a fun trip since last time we chatted. We might have to get into that a little later on, but we're here to talk about longevity, and so we want to welcome everybody that's joining the live audience on Facebook as well as here on TikTok. So welcome everybody that's joining today. We're going to jump into and clarify longevity and really, how many years can someone expect to really realistically add to their life if we're doing it right? And before you answer that question, Dr. Josie, I want to remind all of our listeners to please join the WellWaveNOW Facebook group for more resources on longevity and also to connect with Dr. Josie Tenore. You'll be able to do that through the Facebook group. We'll leave a link in the show notes, but for everybody listening on the audio podcast, you can find that group at www.facebook.com/groups with an S /healthcare disruptors with an S. So back to the realistic, how many years of healthy life should somebody shoot for, Dr. Josie?
Well, if you look at current statistics, which are always, delayed, right? So the latest data is 2023. So the average U.S. male life expectancy is mid-70s, 75, 76 years of age. And the average U.S. female life expectancy is around 81. Now, proactive individuals can actually extend that into their late 80s and 90s, respectively, with some actually reaching over 100, and, depending on genetics, lifestyle, and access to care. But that's actually within our reachable framework now.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Bob and Breck probably know where I'm going, which is that's not even enough, Dr. J. It's 120. Genesis 3:6. I shall not let my spirit contend with man for more than 120 years. And I got my Moses plan. You're going to help me with my Moses plan. Moses was 120 years old, and at 120, he still climbed the mountain, and then he died right there. So that's it. So 90s, 100, that's okay, but I expect you to get me to 120, Dr. Josie.
Okay, well, you asked about now. You didn't ask about 5 years from now.
Yeah, we're going to get into that.
Great line, Dr. J. That's really good. I like that.
We are going to get into that. I'm excited to talk more about that. But and it's also one thing to actually live that long or actually have a quality of life, right? So what is the difference between lifespan and health span?
So lifespan is just simply the number of years that you are alive. So health span, on the other hand, is really the number of years that you're truly thriving. Like, are you mobile? Are you independent? Is your mind sharp? Are you disease-free? Are you connected? This is really what health span, the concept of health span, although I have a new term, healthgevity. I just coined that the other day. It's part of like I'm planning on writing a book, and that's going to be my line. But anyway, so when I ask my patients, do you want to live to like 95 with full vitality or 105 bedridden and with dementia? And the answer is universally, I don't want to be bedridden and live long. I want to live a vital life. So, in a soundbite, you could say health span is your freedom span. Freedom to move, the freedom to think, the freedom to love and live fully. And that's sort of what life should be all about.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit more on that. Say, I don't know if I can put it quantitatively. Like you mentioned the part about thriving, which I like, and of course, good cognitive function. But how would you really define that thriving for your patients? A little bit more on that.
So I look at thriving as somebody who has emotional resilience, emotional and physical resilience. They move their body with purpose. They engage in relationships that light up their life, like a light bulb. They wake up every day with a sense of meaning, with a sense of joy, even though life is not perfect. In fact, life is very imperfect. So they manage stress as if, it's not just managing it, it's mastering it. So again, it's that sense of resiliency. They have a sense of movement. They tend to be very connected. On the flip side, someone who is not thriving usually will say things like, I've lost my curiosity. I don't have enough energy. I don't have connections. I don't have a purpose. I'm kind of just waiting to die. And that to me is really what distinguishes thriving, is just that sense of resilience in all aspects of our lives.
Well, you covered my next question. I was, going to ask about, the function of having purpose, because, I know that, looking at my own parents, my dad was very relatively healthy and always had an organic garden and everything. But after we lost my mother, he really didn't have a purpose anymore. He just wanted to go be with her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think I read something within the last year about, individuals who had been prior CEO, leaders. And they're like, well, in retirement, I spent all this time putting together enough money, but nobody told me I had to have find something to do that gave me a sense of purpose. How much pickleball can I play? How much traveling can I do? And like that sense of purpose doesn't have to be large. It could be, like you said, an organic garden. It could be gardening. It could be hobbies. It could be just anything that gets put on the calendar that somebody can be excited about.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be huge. It can be small.
Well, next we want to reveal to all of our listeners the pillars of longevity and what actually movements are needed, and what people can start with today to start having and preparing for a long life. So, Dr. Josie, you've identified several key areas that everyone needs to be focused on, and so let's take those one by one. And I want to start with diet first.
Let's keep it simple. Like we need food that fuels the mitochondria, or it does and doesn't feed inflammation. So generally whole unprocessed foods gives your cells everything it needs to function. So I think the buzzwords now is macros. Everyone's talking about macros, getting enough macros. To me, I keep thinking macaroni. Okay. So macros are, protein, fats, complex carbohydrates, fibers, making sure that, the categories are fulfilled. But even with that, we don't have that rich topsoil that we had in the 70s. And so even if you're eating as much of a whole food diet as you possibly can, and also because we know more about genetics and genetic mutations, there are certain key core supplements that everybody should be taking. Vitamin D, activated B complex, because a lot of people don't have a mutation in how they process Bs and they don't know about it. So the easier thing to do is just take an activated B complex vitamin, omegas, and a bioavailable multivitamin to cover all the minerals. So whole food diet and some essential nutrients in the form of supplements will help all of your, cells fire up correctly and also feed the microbiome, because that's now a huge topic. And our microbiome, our gut bugs, actually, there's a huge connection between those bacteria in our gut and our brain. And it can drive what we choose to eat. It could also drive how we wake up in the morning and feel. So making sure we get the right nutrients for our microbiome is key. And omegas are actually critical in feeding the microbiome.
Okay. I want to go back to something you mentioned there that I'm not sure everybody is familiar with or understands when you said activated B. So what is an activated B, Dr. J?
So B vitamins that are methylated. So the scientific term is methylation. And that's the way I explain it to patients. It's like putting a sun hat on to protect yourself from the sun. So for people who can do this within their own body, they'll take a B vitamin and they'll add a methyl group, and that's activated. And now their cells can utilize the B vitamins. There are, it's actually more than is quoted. It used to be said that 40% of the population had a methylation issue. In my practice, it's closer to 70 to 80% that at least have one that's not firing on, all cylinders. And so if you can't, put your sun hat on, you're going to get sunburn. So if you can't actually add this methyl group to your B vitamins, your muscles, your brain, everything that needs the energy centers that create energy, those little mitochondria, they can't create the energy that you need. And so the system just doesn't run as efficiently. It's a little bit sluggish.
Okay. And then you also mentioned, the basic supplementation, which was good. I'll try not to ask this in a leading manner, but I don't know if I can not ask it in a leading manner because I've had an epiphany past 4 weeks. What do you think about looking at non-basic supplementation with your patients from a longevity and thriving standpoint?
Well, I mean, there are millions of supplements out there and millions of companies that all claim to have the best. And, how do you know where to start? There is a lot of things out there, but I don't know. I guess I'm more of a proponent of doing the investigation first, finding out if there's deficiencies, and then, then taking what you need. But to just randomly buy a bunch of stuff, it's costly. It may backfire because, the body likes to stay in balance. And if you take too much of one thing, you may throw the balance off of something else. But most of all, it's like you end up having, if it's water-soluble supplements, then expensive urine. But if it's fat-soluble supplements, you can create some toxicity, which is really not recommended if you're trying to create better health.
So what I want to know, though, is how much does your genetic makeup have to do with the the absorption of what you're taking? If something works for Tim, is it going to work for Bob's knees? Wrestling knees are different than football knees.
I mean, genetics.
And he's black and white.
I mean, genetics does have a huge role to play in all of this. That it's genetics, it's supplement manufacturer. Sometimes it's just what they put in as a stabilizing agent that can have an effect on absorption. So it's not that straightforward, but I'm glad your knees are better.
Well, great. So now let's move on to another part of my protocol on working those knees. But you mentioned the pillar of your longevity and thriving, and that's exercise. What really is the role of exercise, in all this?
Well, I think you guys have gotten to know me. I like to give sort of analogies. I talk about muscle as being your retirement savings account. Mm-hmm. Without it, you're metabolically bankrupt. So as we get older, strength training isn't optional, it's essential. So I have an interesting story. I had a patient coming in for her hormone pellets, and I looked at her body comp and I'm like, what happened? This is great. You gained muscle. And she's like, I injured my hip, so I had to do strength training. I hate strength training. And I'm like, this is the first time you've actually gained muscle, and look at how much visceral, and you lost visceral fat and you've lost fat. And she's like, I guess the numbers don't lie.
So what is it? Well, two questions, but I'm going to give you. Well, as I mentioned to you last time, you went to Harvard, and I went to Stanford, and I can answer compound questions. I'm not sure a Harvard graduate can. So I'm going to
Tim, you're getting kind of nasty today, I think.
well, only I'm almost.
But hang on a second. Your gender's male. You can't possibly answer compound.
There you go. There you go.
That is a female strength.
I'm not getting nasty. I'm treating Dr. Josie almost like family because one of my sisters did go to Harvard as well. So just banter. I banter with her about this. Now I'm taking a lot of time here. She saw the light and went to Stanford for graduate school, but but she did do her undergraduate work at Harvard.
Man, I'm totally out of the game. I'm not in either one of those.
But
we can't all be special.
There you go. Yep.
So you mentioned that, hey, she looked good, had that good body comp change. What does that deliver for somebody health-wise in your estimation, especially as they age, Dr. Joseph?
Well, muscles aren't just for aesthetics. They really function as a reservoir for glucose, for glucose handling, for injury prevention, for bone density, for protecting your joints. The stronger the muscles are on either end of the joints, the more protected the joint is. The higher your muscle, actually, muscles are really key in terms of hormone regulation. So it's not just, hey, I look really good in my t-shirt, I got a six-pack. It's pretty much essential for overall health. And, while we've had a obesity epidemic, there's also something called sarcopenia, which can be just as producing of ill health and having a lot of being over fat. So being under muscled is not a good thing for you in terms of longevity.
Yeah, right. So go ahead, Dr. Bob.
Well, I think it's really important at this point to let our listeners know what we mean by strength training, because there's a whole range of strength training from doing the big stuff and doing the little stuff. And I'm a proponent of the little stuff myself.
You for muscles, you really need to do something that's heavy for your muscle to the point where the muscle shakes.
So I do that. I say I do that by going really slow.
Yeah, so there's time under tension. There's different methods, but essentially what I tell people, if your muscles are really shaking and fatigued, you've done what they need in order to tear little muscles. We could talk about body hacking devices. There are machines that can do this for you, and you can go and get an EMS strapped up to you and do some strength training and cheat a little bit, there's not a problem with that because it's all great, which again allows the muscle to be stimulated, and you can do your exercises and you get kind of a double whammy of building up lean muscle.
Yeah, I would say that, my personal opinion, the EMS stuff is better than nothing, but it's just like we used to say, even better than weightlifting was hard work. And like you see Ronald Reagan's got in chop wood. You see some of the strongest guys I wrestled were people who were out basically ranch hands type of thing and work, baling hay, all type like that. That's strength. So I think that actually gives you more useful muscle, more ability for life. This is my term in my book, Dr. Joseph, life fitness. So the EMS might help you with the muscles, but it doesn't make you life fit to carry the groceries and the balance of things of that nature. But it is good.
Well, I'm going to age myself here. Do you remember Sophia Loren?
Yep.
So somebody asked her once, what's your secret of staying so fit? And her response was, I like to clean my own house. And she demonstrated how she would wash the walls and everything, and using her whole body. And you're right. I mean, if you're doing functional strength training, that's going to give you range of motion and all the rest of that. But there are times where people have limitations in terms of body. Like there's people who have they're quadriplegics and they can't really do, mowing the lawn. And sometimes EMS is a helpful tool to keep their range of motion and their muscles strong. So it should still be out there as one of the things that can be fun to do.
So I want to let people also know that just doing natural body movements like Tim was talking about are really fantastic. You don't necessarily need weights to do any of this stuff. So when I was playing college football, I lifted a lot of weights in high school in the first year of college. And then I realized I don't need to lift weights. I need to be smarter about this, and I need to use leverage, and I need to, and so basically what we had to do a test every time we showed up at summer camp, which was the maximum number of push-ups you could do, the maximum number of sit-ups you could do, maximum number of pull-ups and dips. And so that's what I did all summer long. And I built my whole body up it was at least as good as what I did with weight training. And the beautiful thing about these natural movements is you can get full range of motion that you oftentimes can't get using weights. So, just letting people know that there's natural movements that people can do. And if you look on the internet, you can find them all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, your own body is a weight.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, resistance training goes along with strength training. One of your other pillars, Dr. Josie, is sleep. And you list that as a cornerstone to longevity. There's also the opposite of that, right? What are the negative effects if you're not getting enough sleep?
Well, sleep, is really, it's like what your body does to run. If you talk about computers, right? It's like your body runs its repair program when you're sleeping. So, and it's not just the physical repair, it's also emotional repair, believe it or not. So people work through sometimes some traumas that they've had. They problem solve in their sleep. But, I'm sure you've had experiences where you wake up, you're like, I finally solved that problem I was working on for the last 4 months. So it is, it's important to get the right type of sleep because it regulates hormones. It clears out your waste from your brain. It recalibrates your immune system. It allows your tendons to heal. It allows your joints to get plumped up and juicy again. All of these, without restorative sleep, your body's constantly playing catch up. And it's sort of like, again, here's an analogy. It's like running with your car and your check engine light is on and you ignore it. Eventually, something really happens that isn't good. And in the human body, that could be blood sugar issues. Your memory could start to go. Your mood could be affected. Your immune system could get, affected. So it is.
Your relationships could get trashed.
Relationships again. Yeah. So it's really when all of the repair work is being done outside of, intermittent fasting, which is a different kind of repair work, but daily repair work is important, and it cannot be done if you're not sleeping properly.
And how would you define, how does someone know when they're getting the right type of sleep?
Well, the most important thing is if you wake up refreshed, you're getting good sleep. If you wake up groggy and like your head is foggy and you're just not, you're nauseous, you're tired, you're achy, you're not getting good quality sleep. Now, outside of like you did a really hard workout and you're achy the next day, I'm just talking about in general, waking up feeling, refreshed is the best metric for assessing sleep.
Okay. Go ahead.
Other than, devices, which we'll get into, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So are we going to be talking about stress at all on this call here? Because to me, managing, I don't even like the word managing anything. It's like you're either in stress or you're not in stress. And so people are either stressed out or they're not stressed out. And I think that's aside from, or maybe together with nutrition, stress is, and eliminating stress as often as possible, spending the maximum amount of time outside of the stress paradigm is so important because the body can't really heal when there's so much stress going on. Dr. J, what do you think about that?
Well, I have a different concept of stress. I think that I like to think about it as stress versus distress. You need a little bit of stress in order to want to get up in the morning. I mean, stress can be positive. It can excite you. That heart goes, you find something exciting, your heart races. A lot of the biological manifestations of stress, good stress and bad stress are exactly the same, but it's more a matter of at what point does the stress become distress. So if it's overwhelming you, then if it's, at that point, when it's chronic and there's no resolution, then it kind of hijacks your entire body. So it raises cortisol, it promotes inflammation, it worsens gut health, it disrupts your sleep, it suppresses your immune function. there's, all sorts of negative things, but I do like to point out that you do need a little bit of positive stress because that is an important part of living and just giving you the jazz. If you don't have enough stress, you don't get the jazz out of life either. So I like to distinguish sort of there's a line where good stress becomes bad stress.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. So I had forgotten about this word. I had studied it one time and thinking about the same concept, agreeing with the concept you came up with. And the good stress is actually called eustress, eustress.
Mhm.
And what athletes use a lot to focus and get into the zone and perform on. So
Yeah, or a deadline. You got to have a deadline to have something accomplished, or you may never accomplish that item or task.
right.
Many years ago, McMaster University in Canada they set a number figure to every life event, from birthday to marriage to wedding, to divorce to having a mortgage and that sort of thing. And what I found really fascinating was the amount of stress units that was associated with having a mortgage of $10,000 was higher than declaring bankruptcy. And I'm like, I'd love to have only a $10,000. But the point was that,
Wow, I'm going to steal that. That's amazing. I'm going to steal that statistic.
once you declare bankruptcy, it's gone. The stress is gone. But what they did was at the end of a year, you would itemize all of the life events that have happened. And if you got over a certain number, then you were at risk of becoming ill. So even the good things, like having a baby, bringing a new member into the family, winning the lottery, they all had points. And so I thought that was extremely helpful just to give people the idea that, because sometimes when I talk to patients about their stress, they're like, I'm not under stress. And it's like, well, you have, your life, you may have had a lot of change this year. So let's forget about the term stress and let's talk about change. Or events. What has been happening to you over the past year that may have accumulated itself? And if it tips you over the edge, that's probably why you're feeling the way you are now. So it's not that because sometimes people think of it as a personal weakness. Like you're saying, I can't handle my stress, but it's really not about that. It's just about an accumulation of life events over a certain period of time that can be
I love the way you put that. In fact, I'm learning from that because you're saying that, because a lot of people don't think they're under stress, and they obviously are. They're buried in it, but they don't realize it because it's like the fish swimming in water. It's just water, they don't even know what water is until they jump out of it. But when you talk about, oh, well, what's changed in your life, or what have you been attempting to accomplish that you haven't accomplished? I like that, working on the change paradigm, because that can help people see things they weren't seeing before. Thank you.
Yeah, and people departmentalize, right? You might be asking about, any changes at work, and they're not thinking, oh no, everyth's fine at work, but it's something at home that's stressing them out, and they don't even realize it because they say, okay, this is my work life, this is my home life, and they departmentalize all those different things that are going on. Got to look at the collective picture, right?
Okay. Yeah. So we touched on that pillar. So we've had diet, we've had exercise, sleep. The other thing that you'd mentioned before was purpose, and I think that kind of helped with that stress. And so you'd already kind of touched upon that next pillar of community and purpose. But anything else you want to add in that regard?
Well, I would say that loneliness is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Wow.
And unfortunately, it is a lot more prevalent than we've accepted, I think, as a culture, and I mean, I'm not trying to pick on young people and social media and devices, but, I don't call the phone, a smartphone. I call it a keep you so stupid phone, but it also is a distractor of being able to develop life skills for communication and connectivity. And so, loneliness is huge. And so if individuals want to have a good, healthy life, finding a way to get connected and remain connected is really, really crucial. And usually it's like, what do you like to do? Okay, is there a club for that? Can you go out and meet people who do the same things so that there's already a commonality in an interest, so it's a little less scary because there's a lot of social anxiety, especially amongst young people. And to get them over that hurdle, it's like, well, pick something you like. And it's pretty easy to talk to somebody about something that you both like, and then it goes from there. But community, however that manifests itself, whether it's church or shul or, the local Y, playing basketball, doesn't really matter. But what matters is to find a way to be connected with other humans. We are social animals after all.
We're very well said, and it's such a monstrously important point. There's so many people that don't know how to create community for themselves. And so when they can learn how to do that, it can help them with their longevity desires.
Well, think of your dad, Breck. Your mom died and he was like lost.
Yep.
Like Nemo looking for, right? So just lost, and just so having that other person is important. I think that is one of the, if you look at some of the health questionnaires that's circulating, one of the questions is, do you have somebody around who can help you if something goes wrong? And if your answer is no, you're in trouble. So trying to have another human that you can rely on is extremely important.
I even see Medicare recognizing that and supporting remote therapeutic monitoring programs that promote community, connecting with others in, like situations and getting them together. So, even programs like, CMS is recognizing the benefit of having community.
Nice. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so I think your comment there. So we thought diet, exercise, sleep, community, and purpose, and your comment about loneliness and our discussion on stress kind of flow into the next pillar you've got there, which is mental health. But and there's a thought that this chronic stress and trauma accelerate aging. And do you agree with that? And what else can be done about that at this point in time?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about stress and trauma is interesting because we've done a better job with allowing females to resolve trauma a little bit better than males. I mean, I'm making a blanket statement, but it is kind of important. But because I see in my practice, it's much more difficult for males to accept unresolved trauma, and
What would be an example of that? What would be an example of?
well, I mean, so I see, often people end up in couples coming to see me. The wife feels better and drags her husband. And so one of my patients who I, got him hormone optimized, and he is nutritionally balanced, and we've had him on GLP-1s, and he lost weight, and he was, confident again. But the wife comes in and says, he's just depressed. He needs medication, but he was resistant to that, and he was very resistant to the idea that it could have been connected to the burden he has looking after his sister, and how his mother's dementia was another burden. And now this, and so he wasn't able to kind of recognize that carrying the load for family members and some of the trauma that you experience watching a loved one disintegrate before your very eyes needs to be resolved. You need to find a way to see it as a trauma and then deal with it, because otherwise what unresolved trauma does, it keeps the nervous system in this constant fight or flight state, which accelerates the aging process. So it accelerates aging at a cellular level. So, but the other thing is, over time, it can lead to risky behaviors, addiction, isolation, disordered eating. In this particular case, the GLP-1s did nothing for his alcohol intake. So he was self-medicating with alcohol. And, for now, his liver function were fine. But how long is that going to be fine? At some point, his liver's going to say, what the heck? You can't keep poisoning me like this. So that's sort of, but women are, not 100%, but it's women are better able to verbalize, this is, a stressful family situation that I'm now recognizing as traumatic for me as a human being. And I'm going to reach out, I'm going to seek counseling. I'm going to find a girlfriend to talk to about it. I'm going to, take medications if that's what's recommended for me, or not if it's not. So it's it is important that, that trauma is recognized and that mental health is treated appropriately, because a lot of people will just self-medicate.
Yeah. I want to ask a quickie question. I've run into a fair number of my clients who are dealing with trauma, and I'm now understanding from a lot of other people that a lot of people are dealing with trauma. So my question to you, Dr. J, is, how long do people have to deal with trying to resolve their trauma? I know people who've spent years trying to resolve trauma, and I'm thinking to myself, really? Does it require spending? That's my question. Does it require spending years? I don't think so, but maybe there's something you can tell me about trauma that would have me say, okay, I guess I could understand that
I
it could
guess
take years.
it depends if you make your money on it. Woody Allen spent forever in therapy just because it fueled his movies, right? So, I don't think whatever. So
Yeah.
I don't think it should. I mean, from a instinctual and logical perspective, if it's taking years and never being resolved, then you either have the wrong therapist, you're doing the wrong thing, or something's not
That's what, that's what
something's
I think.
not working out, right? Because yes, like, I mean, I'm sure you can all have examples. I've had traumas in my life, and they don't cripple me. It's sort of like, okay, this is what happened. And then you kind of deal with it. And then you find a way, you go through all the stages, anger, this, that, but eventually there's acceptance. And it's sort of like, okay, how am I, the best way to deal with trauma is like, how am I a better person for having had this trauma? Because usually we are, trauma sometimes makes you stronger, makes you better, makes you a more complete human being. So it's not always a bad thing to have trauma. But I agree, like if it's going on forever, it's not.
And I think that's important. And I think it's important for our listeners to understand that, because I'm sure in my experience, at least 30% of the clients and the people that I run into in general are at the effect of trauma. They're trying to resolve it. They spend a lot of time doing it. And so I think for our listeners, it's really important to know that if you have trauma and it's going on and on and on and on, try some different approaches, try some different, see different people, get different opinions about how to resolve it, because there's no need for traumas to be going on for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. It's just no reason for it. So that's my advice to our listeners regarding trauma.
Great. And we may have to have Dr. J back for a deep dive into trauma. Maybe that'll be our next one, how we get through that. And this is fascinating conversation. Good. We're running up against some time constraint here, but we want to make sure that we get some more of what you had to talk about out. So I think there were two other things as part of the pillars of health. One was the hormone health, which I know you spend a lot of time in. And so what do you monitor on that? What are the dangers of ignoring that? And how does that play into your longevity? And what's this new phrase you coined?
Longevity.
Longevity. Okay.
Longevity.
That's going to stick. That's going to make it.
I think so, right?
Yeah.
So because Healthspan just doesn't have the same
No.
use of health.
I never got it, and still don't really get it. I mean, you can't quantify it.
Yeah, right.
How do you quantify it? Anyway.
So hormones, you were asking about that,
Yes.
which is,
and for both men and women, we don't stick with this.
We'll stick with the cliff notes because that's a whole topic. I think we've dealt upon it a little bit, but hormones, I sort of look at hormones as they're kind of like not extras on the movie set, right? They're the essential messengers. That's what they do. They are required to take messages from one part of the body to another part of the body. So when they decline, so does everything that requires the, messengers. What happens if all of the UPS, FedEx, and the United States Postal Service stops, delivering our packages? Like, picture it, right? Things don't work very well. We've had some UPS delays and it's created like havoc. So they are essential. So when they decline, your metabolism goes down, your muscle strength goes down. Remember, we talked about muscles being so important. Well, it's hard to build them when you don't have some key ingredients to help that happen. Cognitive clarity goes away, libido goes away. Sleep is essential, and it's very often disrupted without hormones in play, and mood. So all of these are pretty important in both men and women. So without them, I mean,
Yeah.
some people
But
have low-level hormones even well into their late ages. So it's not necessarily that, everybody gets numbers that go to zero. I mean, there are people who I test them. I'm like, well, look at that. This is why you're not doing so bad, because you actually, all that working out that you've been doing, all those thick muscles that you've been working on, they've actually created some of these hormones that are still there. This is great. So, but they are messengers that are vital to human vitality and existence.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the hardest things for people to understand is and who to go to see to get help with hormone replacement therapy if it's needed. What's your philosophy about that? Hormone replacement therapy.
I mean, if it's needed, right? So, I mean, I see a segment of the population that need it because they're seeking my services because they're symptomatic. So it's very rare. I do have some patients that come in who are not symptomatic and they want to be proactive, but for the most part, so I'm seeing a segment of the population that's a little bit that skews what I have to say and sort of my enthusiasm. But I would say that, I'm seeing a lot of individuals, doing hormone replacement therapy because they view it as a moneymaker. And it's unfortunate because, it can be harmful if not done correctly. So if you do have brain fog and your libido's disrupted and your sleep is disrupted and you've got in your you go to the gym and it's like, why am I so exhausted and I can't seem to maintain any of my muscle, then these are symptoms that should be addressed, and find somebody who you investigate and you make sure their credentials are valid, and you just don't walk into your med spa that happens to have decided to add IV and hormone replacement therapy to their menu.
Right. Yeah. So to recap for our listeners, your pillars for longevity start with diet, exercise, sleep, community and purpose, and mental health and stress, hormone, as we just discussed. What about environment, the toxins in the environment, and how can we minimize those intakes?
Yeah, I mean, it's all around us. It's not something that we can put ourselves in like bubbles, and we certainly wouldn't want to put ourselves in plastic bubbles, put ourselves in a bubble to avoid. But like toxins it's plastics to pesticides. It's a lot of P words. But these can disrupt hormones. They can really harm the way that mitochondria work. They can put you at risk for cancers. It's hard to completely avoid them, but we can make smarter choices. We can decide, okay, why am I microwaving? Whatever happened to just heating things up in a pan, but if you have to, you're in a pinch, use glass, don't use plastic. I don't care if it says microwave safe. Have you ever seen those plastics that are microwave safe?
Yeah, who says it's microwave safe? Really? Who proved that? Who did some studies on that?
I'm not so sure. It still looks nick to me. But anyways, so microwave and glass only. Buy whatever. I mean, I know they're heavy, but I still own Le Creuset pans. These are cast iron pans, and you get a little extra iron from them. So, purchasing cast iron pans or stainless steel pans, and forget about those nonstick ones that are great because nothing sticks, but until the covering starts to break on it, and then they're not so great. So, buy organic whenever possible, grass-fed, free range, all the buzzwords. We have lots of choices now. It doesn't have to be Whole Foods. You can go to Aldi and buy organic food at a really low price. So, trying to, filter your water, minimize parabens in your skincare products, like wear only mineral sunscreen. Like if it's metal, put it on. If it's chemical, probably not such a good idea. So, all of these are little things that we can do to kind of protect ourselves from the environment.
Such great advice. Such great.
Get involved in tree planting. Let's get trees back so that the ozone layer gets restored. So
That's such great advice. That's such really, I mean, these are the simple things that people need to know about, because nobody knows when their nonstick pan covering is coming off, because it's coming off in little tiny pieces. It's going in the body and it's messing up the body, and then things happen, the body gets sick and the whole being gets sick, and then it requires pharmaceuticals. It requires pharmaceuticals for the side effects. Breck's an expert on, working on letting us know about, the side effects of these pharmaceuticals. And I love what he says when he says that when the side effects outweigh the benefits, it's time to look for a different approach,
Yeah, absolutely.
Or when you're chasing the side effects with other pharmaceuticals.
That's the problem. Yeah, big problem. Yeah.
Yep. Well, let's go to our last segment. I'm going to skip for interest of time. I'm just going to tell Dr. Bob, get your NeuroGum. You got to try that out. It's amazing. Has all kinds of vitamins for focus and everything. We're going to go skip that and go into the last segment here for interest of time, and let's go on to the beyond where we're at now, because you teased about it that in 5 years things could be much different for us in longevity. So I want to kind of touch on some of those aspects of what's beyond the basics today.
Well, today everybody knows about the wearables, right? They've got their Oura rings, their Apple watches, their continuous glucose monitors, their sleep trackers, and all that kind of stuff. So they're helpful, but they have limitations. So, I tell my patients, look for patterns, not panic, and then use the data as a compass and not a diagnosis, because the information that you get from them is okay, but it's not accurate 100%, and it's not like written in stone, but they are. So just be cautious with all of the wearables. But I think that I've been having interesting conversations with people interested in longevity, where we're looking at genetics, we're looking at the genome, and can we test certain genetic markers and say, oh, this is at a higher risk for why? Can we do something with that risk? Can we gene splice? I mean, that's something that's happening right now. Talk to biotech companies. But there's also, and I created one myself, a Akkermansia supported probiotic that I think is working really well for my patient. But
that's a big word, Dr. Josie. Akkermansia.
Akkermansia, yes. It's one of the most useful bacterias in the gut that a lot of us lack. So, but sort of targeting, your probiotics for particular bugs to affect a particular change, so that's kind of in our future. Really paying a lot more attention to prebiotics and sort of, insoluble fiber in our diet, and personalized probiotics, because it's not, your gut and mine are not the same. And so I think that, tech is going to play a big role. AI is going to play a big role in all this, but I still caution, let tech be your pilot and not your captain. But I think we're going to be seeing a lot more microbiome targeted, and a lot more genetics or DNA targeted type research and plans that are much more individualized than we're currently seeing.
And then are you so that's the future, you kind of paint that for us, a lot of areas to work on there. In terms of your great work today, are you anything you're specifically proud of in terms of healthgevity that you've delivered, help some clients?
My probiotic. So, because having looked at a lot of stool tests in people, a lot of our diet does not support this one particular bacteria, Akkermansia. And
what does that bacteria do for us? It's so wonderful.
Well, it activates GLP-1 receptors. A lot of people are taking injections to activate those GLP-1 receptors, and we can do that with our own microbiome.
And that's got to be more healthy, right? It's got to be a better way.
And it's how I'm helping my patients either wean off or be on the lowest possible dose of their medications, so that they stay in the healthier range for their body comp. I combine that with another bacteria that's been studied to show that, if eating it, having a higher percentage of this bacteria in your gut has you eating 250 less calories without even knowing. So you put the two together, and it's sort of a good weight management probiotic. And
where do we get it from?
I do have to do a better job actually promoting it, because the manufacturer, when I sort of proposed this, he sort of heard it, and he's like, that's brilliant. And I'm like, well, it makes sense. It's logical. It's not about brilliance. It's about logic. I like logic. So,
well, Dr. Josie, please put a link to where people can find that probiotic and put it up on the Facebook group, because we want to direct people there to go find that. And if you have any specials or anything that you want to offer, please post them up there in that Facebook group.
I really wanted to call it Slim Biome, but somebody else took the name. So it's Acker Melt, because yes,
Okay.
that helps you melt your fat. So it's, I had to come up with some name that I could trademark. So that's the best I could do.
You could have just did, Shady Slim. Shady Slim. Yeah.
But there was there's a lot of really cool names that I had. And every single one, I did a trademark search. It's like, really? It's taken? So
Yeah.
I guess there's
So
a lot of
what is the name, and where do you find it?
Acker Melt. I'll put it in the Facebook page.
Yeah. Excellent.
So I have a supplement line that I call Dr. Josie Recommends. So it's a Dr. Josie Recommends product.
Cool.
Excellent. What other innovations? Where is AI taking us in brief? I know we're over time here, but that's so fascinating to how quick AI is in improving some of the at least the data that we're getting through healthcare now.
Well, I mean, AI has really changed how I do my wellness reviews, because I'll basically take, all of this complex information and I'll put it together and I'll have a whole outline, and then, I'll upload it into one of the AI sites and say, okay, this is my analysis. Is there something I'm missing? And then it comes back with something, and then I'll be like, no, I disagree with that. You're saying this person's pre-diabetic because her hemoglobin A1C is high, but her C-peptide is low, and I think she's not eating enough carbs for her workouts, so it's really gluconeogenesis. And then it comes back with, you are correct. I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm talking to a human, but it does allow me to sort of synthesize a lot of complex information and put it in a form that's very user-friendly. And I think that in the healthcare world, it's just I can't read every single study on the planet.
Right.
So if I'm doing some research, it's like, and I want global data because there's some limitations on what is being done in the US. It's like, tell me what's being studied, what are all the studies showing, and it will give us a lot more information much quicker than any of us can read, even if you're a really fast reader. So I think it's very exciting. And, I just saw Northwestern launched a longevity clinic, and they're using AI to analyze their, the body pods and all of the information that they have in order to put it into a personalized plan for that individual. So I think that is currently already happening, but it's going to be much more exciting as we move forward and live our healthy lives instead of just long ones.
220.
120.
And I think what you stated there a little bit also is you're getting even more proactive with your patients to get them there. And that's why I look at if I summarize a little bit on that, it seemed to me that all your pillars really are about not being responsive to a health issue. It's, while you can use them to address a health issue, it's also about being proactive to avoid them, to thrive and reach that full healthgevity span that you can get.
Thank you for using the term. Yeah, it's true. I mean, as a provider, I have to be honest. You can't put it all on us. I'm a little bit of a different provider, but nowadays, if you're not proactive in your own health, good luck with that. But it is your responsibility to live the best life you can. And that means you got to do the work. You just can't come in and say, oh, okay, tell me what to do, but then do it for me. I mean, it doesn't work. Like if you still go and eat crappy food, like when my patients don't do my recommendations, I'm like, you know what? You not following your program really hasn't affected my life and my health at all. It's your life and your health that it's affected, not mine. So you have to be responsible for your own health.
So to me, that's the pillar, actually, responsibility.
Yeah. It could be a new one.
Yeah, that's right in line with our philosophy and what we try to teach here and have good experts on like you about. It's helping people get that knowledge, that mindset to be able to do that, because they've got to be their own general contractors for their wellness and to achieve that. So,
take 100% responsibility for your own life. So Dr. J, what is the ultimate message then for our listeners today and how to get started? They might feel a little overwhelmed. We've covered a lot. What's the ultimate goal for our listeners today?
You know me, I'm a keep it simple, stupid person, right? So it's overwhelming. it really is overwhelming. So I think that the best message that I can give is to like sleep on it, get good quality. But when you wake up in the morning, start with some awareness. I think that don't just jump into some protocol like feed for what, like start with like, let's check in with my life. Take a deep breath. Ask yourself when you wake up, am I refreshed or am I foggy? Am I reaching for sugar or am I reaching for something nourishing? Do I have a purpose today or am I dreading going into the office? Who can I count on for whatever I need? Like, do I love someone? Do I not? Like do a self-awareness check-in, and then whichever one of those items that are not comfortable as an answer, then start with there. If you don't have someone that you're connected with, work on that first. If you're waking up really foggy and groggy, maybe look at your sleep first. So don't try to do everything, because that will be impossible. But look at, just something bite-sized and start there. But it really has to start with self-awareness and self-honesty. And if you're not honest with yourself, you're never going to start the journey.
Yeah. That's great. That's great advice, because there's two essential steps in the change process. And the first one is new awareness of the right type. Without new awareness, change can never happen. So you brought that up. Perfect.
It's excellent. Well, thank you, Dr. Josie. It's so great to have you on again. We definitely will have you back. You have so much to offer. So we appreciate learning from you and you showing us healthgevity. And it's not that it's not a mystery, that it's a strategy. And with the right action, and they guided us through what the right knowledge is that we need to know, and how we can live long years that count. It's not just living till a long time, but it's actually making those years count. So thank you for sharing that with us and showing us the possibility, and taking some of the guesswork out of it to start thriving and not just surviving. So until next time.
Thanks for having me, including the ribbing I get from Tim.
Gotta have that. But now we all know about healthgevity, and we look forward to learning more on our next episode of the WellWaveNOW show. Until next time, stay curious, stay empowered, and remember, wellness, it's in you.